Heat intensifies surrounding the impeachment inquiry of the president. Health becomes a big issue in the Democratic presidential race, and the financial picture for Iowa state government turns in a positive direction. We'll get to all of these in a conversation this morning with Democratic political consultant Porter McNeil and former Rock Island County Republican Party Chair Bill Blooms. Great to see you both as well.
Good to be here.
So we'll start with Iowa. The state government finished the fiscal year with a surplus of almost $290 million. That's more than double last year's surplus. It's a big turnaround for the state that once saw a billion-dollar surplus disappear in recent years. Republicans that control the last 2 years cut taxes and spending. I guess how much does this strengthen the Republican argument that this is the approach to growing the economy? Porter?
Well, listen, it's always good to have a surplus rather than a deficit. I don't think it's time to dance in the streets of Davenport. The Medicaid funding, the health care budget mid-year could draw more money. There were cuts in education that could be restored. So, you know, it's good news, but with the health care costs that are so uncertain, you have to be careful. And when I worked for Comptroller Dan Hines in Springfield, he set up a rainy day fund, which is probably a smart move for a state like Iowa.
But Democrats really don't like to see the programs that they support not doing as well. Your response here, Bill, I'm sure you're pretty happy to hear those sorts of things, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think it underscores that Iowa's got a thriving economy. They're attracting people, they're attracting companies. And when you have higher economic activity, you generate more tax revenue, which is exactly where we think the surplus is coming from.
All right, let's move on to the next topic here. A judge this week made a significant ruling regarding Iowa's voter ID law. He largely upheld the provisions of the law, but did toss out some of them. The law requires voters to show one of 6 forms of ID considered acceptable to be able to go into the voting booth with a ballot. That stays in place. The judge struck down the provision that gave election officials the authority to turn away a voter whose signature on record didn't match one on an application for an absentee ballot. Challengers to the law argued it paves the way for voter suppression. Both sides claim some victory here. I guess where are we after this decision, and is the voter ID question settled? Bill, what do you think?
Well, I think the Republicans in general view the voter ID law as a victory for us. Out of a 35-page law, they struck something like 5 sentences out of the entire law. I think requiring a voter ID is the right thing. When with all the verbiage that gets thrown around about election fraud and stealing elections, I think that can happen at the ballot box with people who are voting illegally just as easily as it could from something else.
Porter?
Well, I think, you know, Iowa's had a pretty clean record, not much voter fraud. This is a mixed bag. LULAC, Hispanic rights groups have claimed some victory.
Certainly.
Yeah, and they feel that there are elements of it that were successful for them. On the other hand, I think you have to look at the trend to try to suppress college vote across the country, and Republicans have had pushed some provisions to suppress the vote. I think you've got to be careful about any kind of requirement that makes it harder for college students to vote. Particularly they're there from other states, and it's more difficult. You don't want to put up more hurdles.
Why would a voter ID law suppress that?
Well, it's just adding another layer of requirements. You know, it's anything to confuse or challenge or make it more difficult, which is already difficult for college students when they're traveling from other states.
Let's go to one other topic here. Well, we've got a couple more, certainly. A Democratic presidential candidate, Bernie Sanders, wound up in the hospital this week because of a blocked artery. He's off the campaign trail after surgery until further notice. That's the procedure itself to insert 2 stents isn't considered all that major when it comes to heart procedures. However, it could certainly make health an issue, as well as age an issue in this campaign. Senator Sanders is 78, Joe Biden 76, Donald Trump 73, and the oldest president in history. How much do you think health and age will matter in this presidential election, Porter?
Well, you know, we've only had 3 presidents in their 70s. I remember when Ronald Reagan used his age to an advantage against Walter Mondale. So these candidates are going to have to do something like that. They are showing they're vigorous. Anyone who can keep up with this campaign trail rigor is demonstrating a certain amount of good health. But anytime the story is not what you want it to be is not a good thing. Anytime you're in a campaign and the news is raising questions about your health, that's not a good day or a good story or a good week.
It is grueling, certainly. I mean, they're working 12, 15-hour days, just even on the trail, not accounting just getting ready for all those events and things like that. They're getting a little limited sleep. I think I asked Bernie Sanders last week, how much sleep are you getting? He said, not much. It's like, so I get it. What do you think here, Bill, in terms of those 2 things becoming an issue, not just for Sanders, but in general for the candidates?
Well, I think it's more tied to the individual and how vigorous and robust they present themselves. In the case of Sanders, I remember in the last debate, he opened up the debate, and he sat there and didn't say anything for about 10 seconds, and the MCs were about to say, you know, Bernie, are you going to speak? And then he started talking, and I think he was just maybe collecting his thoughts, or maybe it was theatrical, but it came across as like, does he know he's first? And for that matter, you know, Joe Biden has been throwing out a lot of misstatements and gaffes, and part of it is just the way Joe Biden's always been. But I think when he uses things like telephones and record players in his comments, where he's reaching out for websites and maybe Twitter accounts, I think he's kind of, there's a danger he's going to disconnect from the younger voters that they're looking for.
Well, I know Democrats point to Twitter as well for the Republican candidate, but let's move on to the last thing, because you can't turn on cable news these days without seeing coverage of the whistleblower scandal surrounding President Trump and his call with Ukraine's president. A call the whistleblower with the CIA claims Trump tried to get Ukraine's leader to investigate Joe Biden, essentially interfere with the 2020 election. That was the straw that broke the camel's back for Democrats to launch an impeachment inquiry, something they were reluctant to do in the past until now. Republicans have been stalwart in their support of the president, though a sign that changed at least a little came when Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley says the whistleblower should be heard. I guess, how much cover does Grassley provide other Republicans who might want to distance themselves from the president? The question is, will they, and how many, that sort of thing. What do you think here, Bill?
Well, I think, you know, I've read both the whistleblower's report and I've read the transcript on the call with the Ukrainian president.
And the transcript itself says it's not verbatim, so let's people know.
Right. No, it's a collection of recollections of people who were present at the time. But I think the whistleblower was not present during any of the events that he's whistleblowing on. It's all third party. It's all, somebody told me that he said this.
But it's been corroborated by other people too. What he said has been corroborated, even in the transcript of the call. It's been corroborated.
Well, some things, but also, when you look at the transcript, it's like, well, what is actually wrong with what he said?
Okay, this question the question really was focused on what Grassley did. Does it give Republicans cover to distance themselves from the president, and will they?
Well, I think it makes Republicans look even-handed. That, yeah, sure, we'll go out there and we'll take a look at this. But I think the standard Republican position is there's not enough there to do anything with.
Porter?
Well, absolutely. Mitt Romney and Chuck Grassley and others. I think there'll be some growing voices among the moderates in the Republican Party who are going to see more evidence of tying national security policy to whether or not you do your investigations of the Bidens. You're asking China to investigate the Bidens, Ukraine, and other countries, and tying that to national security policy. Clearly a violation of national security, ethics, and in triggering this impeachment. It's a serious matter.
Does it make a difference in the long run, though? Quickly, just have a few seconds. Do you think it's going to matter at all in the long run in terms of impeachment?
I do. I think he's kind of crossed the threshold.
Enough to get senators and the Republican senators to go along and remove him from office?
I don't think so. I think there's absolutely no way that he gets removed from office. At the end of the day, at most, the Democrats will vote on a party line for impeachment. The Republicans in the Senate will support the president.
Will also be party line,
and that'll be the end of that.
Bill Blue and Porter McNeil. Interesting times, of course. Thanks for the discussion and the conversation. That brings us to our question of the week. What do you think about the possible impeachment of President Trump? Send your answer by email to fortherecord@whbf.com or respond to this post on Facebook at the Local 4 News WHBF TV page or on my page.